little while ago we delivered this bouncing baby boy of an X79 system with an E5-2450 V2 Xeon processor and an RX 480 video card, and it was performing quite well for the £175 it cost to build. I reckoned it would be able to handle an upgrade to a 1080 Ti, and seeing as I've recently bought one and now have better testing data from recent videos, we can put that theory to the test. You don't have to join me in this endeavour, but it will be marked on your report card if you don't. Welcome to Computers, I'm Scott, and today on the desk of Esk, let's see if this build can handle a GPU that costs as much as the rest of the system put together. Nothing too exciting to show for the setup here, a quick run of the display driver uninstall utility to do what it says on its tin, a swap of the GPU, and installation of the NVIDIA drivers. I'll run through the usual battery of testing and compare the results with the RX 480, and as we've also got data from the pairing of this Xeon with the 7800 XT, we can see how close we're getting to its limits. If the 1080 Ti is performing significantly worse than we saw the testing with the newer Xeon, we can point that out too. A link to the build video should be popping up now if you want the full system details, but the important parts for today's experiment are the QIDA X79, or so it claims, motherboard, with 16GB of 1600MHz DDR3 RAM, and of course the E5-2450 V2 Xeon, an 8-core, 16-thread part from 2013 with a base clock of 2.5GHz, turboing up to 3.3GHz. Let's get cracking. Running through 3D Mark first, and Firestrike gives us 17,543 points, which is a solid 50% better than the RX 480 result. Decent, but it's 18% lower than the 1080 Ti gets with the more modern Xeon, the E5-2450 V4. TimeSpy gives us 8,987 points, a massive 103% better than the RX 480 results of 4,421, but 9% lower than the V4 Xeon result. Rounding off the synthetics, superposition at 1080p high settings gives us 11,846, another big win of 111% over the RX 480 numbers. Still, the 1080 Ti can give more, as the 18% drop from the V4 Xeon results shows. Shadow of the Tomb Raider at 1080p high settings is sitting at 88 average FPS. That's only 28% better than the RX 480 and essentially the same result as the 7800 XT. The more powerful V4 Xeon gets another 30% out of the 1080 Ti at 130%, so a concerning showing for my won't bottleneck it theory. The Counter-Strike 2 test results I've been gathering for videos lately across multiple systems are weird, to the point that I no longer really trust it. But for completeness, here's the FPS 7 benchmark at very high settings, which gives us 102 FPS, which sits nicely between the 480's 76 FPS and the 7800 XT's 120 FPS. The V4 Xeon gets 123 FPS. Dropping to low settings, but with dynamic shadows, again gives that inexplicable drop in performance, which is what has to be questioning either its sanity or mine. Here we get only 94 FPS, lower than the 480's 119 FPS. Absolute nonsense. The 7800 XT gets 160 FPS, and the 1080 Ti V4 Xeon combo got 149 FPS, but I'm not putting very much faith in any of that at this point. Returning to Night City, we've got the inbuilt Cyberpunk 2077 benchmark at 1080p ultra settings getting 60 FPS, a 70% gain on the 480's 35 FPS, and the 7800 XT gave us a similar 64 FPS, so we're pretty much at the CPU limits for this game. There's about 20% of additional performance left in the 1080 Ti, as the V4 Xeon result of 75 FPS proves. It's a similar story in actual gameplay on the mean streets of Kabuki, where the 38 FPS result is functionally the same as the 7800 XT's 40 FPS, with the V4 Xeon again squeaking roughly 30% more out of the 1080 Ti at 53 FPS. We descend into Unreal Engine 5 next with the Black Myth Wukong benchmark at 1080p high, without any RT or upscaling, where the 38 FPS result is again roughly halfway between the 480's 25 FPS and the 7800 XT's 69 FPS. It's also exactly the same 38 FPS result for the V4 Xeon. Marvel Rivals at 1080p medium settings, again without any RT or upscaling, gives us a similar 35 FPS result, again 50% better than the 4080's 23 FPS, but about 50% off the 7800 XT's 53 FPS. It's seemingly wasting at least 40% of the 1080 Ti's potential in this game, if the V4 Xeon's 60 FPS is anything to go by. Assassin's Creed Mirage at 1080p high settings returns 70 FPS, again 50% better than the 4080's 46 FPS and within touching distance of the 7800 XT's 79 FPS. Still, the V4 Xeon can get 90 FPS out of it, so about a 22% difference. While we're getting a very playable result on Forza Horizon 5 at 1080p high settings at 73 FPS, it's only a 16% increase on the RX 480 numbers. The V4 Xeon can get 102 FPS, so that's a 28% drop from where it could be. Horizon Zero Dawn at 1080p favour quality settings gives us 80 FPS, another decent 50-ish% jump from the 4080's 52 FPS, and reasonably close to the 7800 XT's 91%. But again, the V4 Xeon result of 110 FPS shows a near 30% performance drop. Red Dead Redemption 2, also at 1080p favour quality settings, will give us 64 FPS, which is, say it with me now, about 50% better than the 4080's 42 FPS. This is also one of the rare occasions where the single Xeon result is pretty much the same at 66 FPS. Total War Warhammer 3's Mirrors of Madness benchmark at 1080p Ultra gives us a slightly disappointing 27 FPS, although I think this is more of a reflection on the CPU, as shown by the 7800 XT's identical 27 FPS result. The V4 Xeon gets 48 FPS. We're rounding out the testing with a wander around Baldur's Gate 3's Lower City, where we're getting much the same story. With this V2 Xeon, the 1080 Ti gets 40 FPS, the 7800 XT gets 41 FPS, and there's about a 30% benefit in going to the V4 Xeon at 55 FPS. Much as I hate to admit it, I was wrong. This processor cannot properly handle the 1080 Ti, at least on the bulk of these games we've tested. We are on average about 20 to 25% down on the performance we can get out of the 1080 Ti with a more powerful CPU, and there may be even more potential, as there's no guarantee those V4 Xeon results are the absolute best that the 1080 Ti can deliver. Obviously, it's able to deliver a sizable jump up from the RX 480, 50 to 60% better performance, but you'll have to judge for yourself whether that jump in performance is worth paying about 5 times the price. I'd say not, unless you intend on keeping the 1080 Ti around for a future platform upgrade or just see a particularly good deal on one. Under normal circumstances, you'd be better off moving a bit down the stack. If you're looking to keep the CPU and GPU in perfect harmony, I'd guess a 1070 or 1660 would fit the bill, or maybe one of AMD's Vega cards, which I'd really love to test sometime. Those would cost about half the £160 that I paid for this 1080 Ti, and should perform roughly the same given the CPU bottleneck, so better value for money. Although I still think the winning play for this setup is to keep it super budget, as the value that £27 8GB RX 480 delivers is phenomenal, and somehow still clinging on to relevancy a decade on from its release. That's all I have for you now, but if you have any questions or want further details, please leave a comment down below, and if you enjoyed this Videotronic missive then consider subscribing. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other.